I now call officers from the Australian Federal Police. Welcome, Commissioner. Would you like to make an opening statement before we go to questions today?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would.
Thank you.
Good evening, committee members. Global instability, geopolitical contests and technological advancements have changed dramatically since I was appointed AFP Commissioner 5 years ago. The volume and complexity in federal crime is altering the shape of the AFP as we counter a two-tiered system of crime. We are still focused on the business as usual, disrupting illicit drug trafficking, terrorism, online child exploitation and fraud. But the AFP is more than ever policing grey zone warfare, which includes cyber attacks, espionage and foreign interference. The shadowy hands pulling the strings to achieve political objectives are a direct threat to Australia's national security, our democracy and our democratic institutions. Investigating crimes committed in the shadows takes more resources, skill and time. It also takes diplomacy, partnerships and trust. Every day we share crucial information and resources with like-minded countries to help defend our countries and citizens from those who want to do us harm. Our partnerships with other law enforcement agencies throughout the world have never been so important. An example is our large footprint in the Pacific today. For the AFP, this is non-negotiable. With our shared democratic values, we remain the partner of choice for Pacific Island Police. Through several programs, forums and investment, the AFP works closely with our Pacific neighbours to provide security and training uplift in the region. We are also working closely with the US and the UK as the AFP finalises planning and preparation for the essential and significant capability build for the new protection model for AUKUS submarines. This will take expertise and new skills for our protective service officers and ensure one of Australia's key lines of defence are appropriately safeguarded. This new capability requirement comes as we continue to build our intelligence and capability, especially as we continue to combat transnational serious organised crime, which the AFP has described as a national security threat. Organised crime will expand its criminal enterprise whenever there is vulnerability and profitability. Organised crime groups are growing and diversifying, and many targeting Australia remain offshore. Australian criminals often meet in offshore resort locations to discuss and plan their criminality, while at the same time stockpiling illicit drugs in nearby vulnerable countries. These drugs are often destined for Australia. However, some are also making their way into the communities of those vulnerable countries, creating a new criminal ecosystem. We work closely with partners to disrupt this criminality, and it is a great shame that this is impacting on the safety and security of some other nations. We also remain concerned that some organised criminals continue to support the families of offenders incarcerated in Australia, mitigating deterrence. It is an example of how difficult it can be to break criminal tribalism, which is why the AFP continues to invest resources and time in dismantling organised crime. And in a message to organised crime, I'm warning them today that we will continue to target their offending, regardless of our other priorities, including the upcoming federal election. The AFP has established Operation Australis 25 to ensure the safety, security and dignity of Australian high office holders, federal parliamentarians and candidates for the election. It will be supported by the Commonwealth agencies and state and territory law enforcement partners to enable a coordinated rapid response for triaging, assessing and acting upon threats and reports of crime. An Incident Coordination Centre, as we call it, an ICC, will operate 7 days a week and will be the centralised hub for management of all operations and information related to the federal election. All of the matters I raised today reflect our new normal and highlight our core duties. There is no greater priority for the AFP than protecting Australians and protecting Australia's interests. We do this every day. Finally, I expect you will want to ask the AFP questions about Operation Kissinger, which is our investigation into a caravan found in January in New South Wales, and Operation Hillfield, the investigation into the arson of the Adass Israel Synagogue in Melbourne last year. I understand there is great interest in these investigations. However, I will not provide updates in public forums. Detail provided, whether it seems innocuous or not, can have an impact on investigations, including giving suspects an insight about what we knew and when, and what processes triggered expected tasks. We are unapologetic that our main priority remains on identifying the offenders and bringing them before the courts. The AFP and partners will provide an update at an appropriate time. Thank you, and we're happy to take questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. We will have questions. Senator Patterson, you have the call.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, in your absence at the last round of Senate estimates, I asked your colleagues to reflect whether or not, with the benefit of hindsight, they felt the AFP had moved quickly enough and put enough resources behind the growing anti-Semitism problem. This is in November last year, and it was before the firebombing of the Adass Synagogue. It was before the targeting of Mr. Rivchin's home, former home. It was before the targeting of a childcare centre. It was before the discovery of the caravan at Dural. I wanted to give you the opportunity to reflect on that and whether you think over the last 15 or 16 months since the 7th of October, the AFP moved quickly enough and firmly enough on this problem.
Yeah, I think, as you're aware, Senator, we have I think a world-class joint counter-terrorism team structure that is in every state and territory. And that's the lens that we look through. And that joint counter-terrorism team has been in operation for many years and been very successful at being able to counter terrorist threats. So I think from a structural point of view, certainly we have the infrastructure in place. And I think also, and I've said this statement in the public as well, around the fact that we're now getting in behind some of these entities which are linking to organised crime. And I've said crime as a service has become a serious threat in this country. And I'm happy to explain that and have others explain, which I think you're aware of what crime as a service is. So, and as you know, the complexity of the world we live in now, a lot of our high harm targets are not in Australia. So this presents a real challenge for us onshore and both offshore, especially if you're based yourself in countries that are hostile to Australia. So more and more we're having to work out innovative ways of how do we go after a target that's living in a hostile country that we don't have any agreement with to work with. To be able to achieve those objectives. And what I would say is we have had some success in some of those countries that traditionally were hostile, using different techniques and also a different methodology of how we're deploying our people overseas. So I don't want to go into all those operational details, but what the message we're trying to send is to organised crime in particular is we're not going to stop and we'll hunt you down. If you're posing a threat to our citizens and our country, we'll come after you, and we've proven that with some of Australia's most serious threats where we're able to push into different countries and actually successfully arrest, one of Australia's top targets. I don't want to mention his name, but you probably would know who I'm talking about. I think the other thing, if I can just quickly say, is the threat of outlaw motorcycle gangs has continued and, if anything, got stronger globally. And they are a global enterprise that are now involved in any illicit activity that generates profit for them, and that they don't have to pay tax and like normal citizens. So that continues to be a threat, and that's why we do most of our operations now done jointly, either Commonwealth or with state as well.
That's interesting context, but it doesn't directly address the question that I asked, which is, did the AFP act early enough and firmly enough on the anti-Semitism crisis? And let me give you some specific examples to illustrate it. I and others have welcomed the establishment of Operation Advana. I think it had a deterrent effect almost immediately. the week in, week out display of listed terrorist symbols like Hezbollah flags and Hamas flags virtually stopped after Advana and after AFP made that statement. But by that point, it had been happening for months. So shouldn't something like Operation Advana have been launched earlier when I and others have been urging you to act on this crime type?
Senator, perhaps if I could take us back to just after October 7, 2023, where the AFP did stand up Operation Larimar in the days after, and that ran through for a number of months, and that was a 24/7 incident coordination centre with Intel Cell, Operation Cell, Investigation Cell attached to it to address what we expected to come out of that conflict. Operation Larimar was then rolled into our business as usual counterterrorism and special investigations command. You're then aware, and we were obviously investigating matters through our CTSI command. You've obviously mentioned now Operation Advana, which you are aware was created to particularly address the protest activity in Melbourne on the 29th of September, but not just that activity, but that was the majority of it. And then, of course, we now have Operation Avalite, which was commenced in December.
I'll come to that in a minute, but I just want to finish on Advana first. I mean, the 29th of September was a particularly shocking instance of so many Hezbollah flags, but it was not the first instance of terrorist flags being displayed at these rallies. In fact, I think it was in July or August that year that I tabled documents in the Senate which showed examples of Hamas and Al-Qassam brigades logos that were displayed at rallies, and I think actually some of those people have subsequently been charged, which is very welcome. But why wasn't Operation Advana started earlier in response to those first displays of terrorist symbols? It's really a question for the Commissioner who's responsible for leading the organisation, directing resources.
Senator, what I would say to that, as I've explained, our CTSI command is very well structured and positioned to investigate those matters. You're right, we did stand up Operation Advana in response to that protest, but we were investigating similar matters prior to that. You will also be aware that we were working with new legislation and within the legislation that we've been provided and some of the challenges that we've been on the record talking through, but we have had some good results in relation to prohibited symbols specifically.
I hesitate to interrupt, Deputy Commissioner, but we're running way over time tonight, and I'm concerned our time will be limited. So I do understand those points you make. I'd just reiterate that the first charges for prohibited hate symbols did not occur until after Operation Advana was stood up, and had it been stood up earlier, perhaps that wouldn't have been the case. On the other example which you cited, and again I direct this to the Commissioner, Operation Avalite was a very welcome response to the Adass Israel synagogue bombing, but it should not have required the bombing and firebombing of a synagogue to stand up a special task force. It was already clear anti-Semitism was out of control, and the Jewish community had been crying out for stronger law enforcement prior to that. With the benefit of hindsight, don't you think it would have been a good thing to have that in place earlier?
No, I think we acted appropriately, and I think our results have shown that. You've also got to understand we operate in a two-tiered system, which is what I was talking about. The state police have certain responsibility, and there's at times where they may want to investigate certain matters, and they can even lay Commonwealth charges, which I think they've been doing as well. So I think it's probably not as easy as what most people think about just going out and arresting someone. First of all, you're taking their liberty away. Second of all, you have to have evidence and reasonable grounds to believe that they've committed an offence. And that sometimes has meant we have had to obtain that video footage. What's the source of that video footage? We have to go through our forensics procedures. There's a lot there that you have to do. Yes, you can make decisions on the spot, but that's also what we call the Office of Constable, where that's independent of me. The only time that I, as Commissioner, can direct any of my officers to arrest anyone is actually in a public order situation where there's a riot, for example. And even that is you have to be very careful with that. So there are independent decision makers, and some you will get. We are a broad church, Sometimes some officers may not think the threshold has been met. Some others would say, yes, it has been. It's not as easy as perhaps what's portrayed on television.
No one should suggest that your job is easy, and I'm certainly not suggesting that. But I'm just interested to know if there's been any reflection. If you can honestly say, with the benefit of hindsight, saying how out of control this problem has become in our country and how distressing it's been for Australians, that there's nothing that you would have done differently.
I think the challenge we've had was we've had to respect those state jurisdictions and what their needs and wishes are and their strategies, and then we've had to work with every state differently.
Okay. All right. Moving on. I heard your evidence in your opening statement about the caravan incident and your reluctance on commenting on the investigation, and I respect that, and I will not ask you to comment on the investigation or anything that is operationally sensitive. But I would like to ask about the AFP's briefing to the government, including ministers and the Prime Minister, about that incident. So can you tell me when the AFP first briefed either a minister or the Prime Minister or their officers on the discovery of the caravan?
What I can say is this, and this is the truth, of course, is that I briefed ministers at the appropriate time. And that is often led by my operational arm and done in an appropriate way.
Was the appropriate time immediately before a Daily Telegraph article was about to be published?
I'm not going to speculate because it's not helpful. We have, as I said in my opening statement, we're still investigating quite a few matters, and they'll be watching this. So it's not helpful to our investigation for me to disclose that. As much as I'd like to assist and help you, Senator, my operational arm would never forgive me.
Prejudice to an investigation is an acceptable grounds for declining to answer a question from the Senate under the Senate standing orders, but it requires that you specify the specific harm that would be caused by a disclosure. And so what I'd be asking you to do if you are refusing to provide that information is how it would harm an investigation to say when a politician or a government department or an office was first briefed.
Well, and also, Senator Patterson, as you are fully aware, if you are insisting on an answer, the Commissioner is entitled to take it on notice to then consider whether a PII claim needs to be made. And if you are asking the Commissioner to go down that route, for every question that you are planning on asking, then that is something that is available to him. I would probably suggest he has better things to do, but if you want to go down that route, he also can take that line of questioning in that way.
Thank you, Chair. And in response to that, and just before the Commissioner does answer the question, in anticipating that possibility, Senator Cash and I wrote to the Commissioner in advance of Senate estimates advising that we would have questions on this matter so that he could seek advice and come prepared to specify whether a public interest immunity claim would need to be made, and if so, on what grounds.
No, I think I wrote back to both of you, so you have my reply on that. I think in regards to your current question, I will need to take that on notice.
Okay. Without speaking specifically about this incident, how could it prejudice any investigation to say when a politician was briefed about the awareness of the investigation?
Well, again, I'd like to seek my general counsel, so I'll have to take this on notice. Because there's many, I could probably talk for 30 minutes just on that answer alone.
Well, I invite you to do so.
I don't think you'd be happy with me, but I'll take that on notice, Senator. Thank you.
Well, as you know, Commissioner, the New South Wales Premier was asked this question at the press conference where New South Wales Police disclosed their knowledge of the events in response to the Daily Telegraph reporting, and the New South Wales Premier, without hesitation, told the media and the public the day in which he was briefed by New South Wales Police. Has he jeopardised the investigation by doing that? As
I said, we worry about our investigation and what we're doing. That's a matter for New South Wales.
It's a joint investigation.
That's right.
So has it jeopardised the joint investigation?
All I can say is that, again, that's a matter for New South Wales. I think there was a period of time there where there was cross purpose. We were moving into, I can't go into depth about the status of our investigation, but all I say is ours continues, and more speculation on our current investigation, the more harm it's going to do to our investigation.
So on the 6th of December last year, after the Adas Israel synagogue firebombing, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "I have been briefed this morning by the AFP Commissioner Reece Kershaw." Why was the Prime Minister able to disclose when he was briefed by you on that ongoing investigation, but neither you or the Prime Minister can disclose it in relation to this ongoing investigation?
Yeah, part of it relates again to the operational arm being able to provide advice to me or senior officers. I've got Assistant Commissioner Nutt here, who is a counter-terrorism expert, and he can probably assist you with how that process works. There is a formal process that actually is undertaken on this.
Thanks, Commissioner. Senator Steve Nutt, Assistant Commissioner for Counter-Terrorism and Special Investigations for the AFP. As the Commissioner's already mentioned, we do have significant experience at managing complex and sensitive counter-terrorism investigations. Those investigations and the responses, of course, are bound by robust arrangements, joint arrangements, to govern when we say and do things, and with various levels of senior oversight. And to back our experience up, going back to 2014, Senator, 177 people have been charged as a result of counter-terrorism operations, 102 counter-terrorism operations in Australia. We've had 14 attacks and 26 major disruptions over that period, Senator, into potential acts in preparation and imminent acts in preparation offences and planning in Australia. In 2024 alone, we've arrested 17 people for offences as a result of 12 counter-terrorism operations. So I want to say with this very mature processes on how we manage the counter-terrorism operations, and the governance themselves are contained in the Australian New Zealand Counter-Terrorism Committee framework, and we have extra specific governance around the leadership and management strategies. We have an operations coordination group, which is made up of superintendents mostly, and that group is charged with analysing investigative strategies, coming up with proposals, and essentially developing strategies that maximise the capabilities of all the joint counter-terrorism agencies. That committee reports to a joint management committee. That's assistant commissioner level. I sit on every JMC in Australia. The intent of doing that is to ensure national consistency, coordination and interoperability, so the same standards no matter what the jurisdiction. And as my role in the Joint Management Committee and others is that we provide strategic direction on the investigations and identify the main mitigations for threats and opportunities, and also identify what the trigger situations are. And also,
I'm grateful for you providing this detail, but it's a very long answer and I will be wrapped up for time soon. So I just want to clarify those complex and involved and detailed processes that you say is necessary to go through before a disclosure can be made. Are you saying that all of that happened on the morning of the 6th of December between the discovery of the Adas Israel firebombing and the Prime Minister's disclosure about his briefing, and that the operational arm of the AFP provided advice to the Prime Minister that it was okay for him to disclose that?
So what I will say is the JMC are responsible for managing those media triggers or strategies and determining what should happen and when as it relates to the investigation as it is. We're the closest to the investigation, Senator.
So that wasn't an answer to my question, Assistant Commissioner. Thank you, Chair. That didn't answer my question. On the morning of the Adas Israel synagogue firebombing, in the couple of hours between that incident becoming public and the Prime Minister saying he was briefed, are you saying the JMC met, made a decision and advised the Prime Minister that he could disclose that briefing?
I'll refer back to the Commissioner's statements in the opening remarks about what we can say around those specific investigations, and so that position applies to what you're asking. I can't answer because of the similar grounds that have already been made at the moment, Senator. I'm sorry I can't help you on this occasion.
And
Thank
Senator,
you.
just to make the point that obviously every matter is different, every investigative strategy is going to be different, so it is very difficult to compare one matter to another, even if they appear to the public to be similar. The intricacies and particularly the investigative strategies that we want to leave open to ourselves have to be forefront in terms of the OCG and the JMC when they're making those decisions or providing that advice.
We'll come back to you, Senator
Thank you,
Patterson.
Chair.
Senator Polly.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, and your team for coming before us. I want to follow up on questions I've asked over a long period of time around child exploitation, and I wondered if you could give me an update about challenges and the success that we read in the media, unfortunately, every other day.
Senator, Deputy Commissioner Ian McCartney, Deputy Commissioner of Crime, and firstly let me say we appreciate your strong interest and your passion in this area, Senator, that's been fairly long lasting, so we do appreciate that. I think the work that we do in this space is the crucial aspect is the partnerships that we have, both domestic and international. I think a really good example of the international partnerships we have is through the Virtual Global Task Force. The VGT is a law enforcement-led strategic forum that includes 15 international law enforcement agencies, and we're honoured and proud to be part of that construct. It was established a number of years ago as a direct response to the rise in offenders targeting children all over the world through online social interactions and travelling overseas to commit contact sexual abuse. The most recent Virtual Global Task Force meeting was held last October in London, and it was co-chaired by the AFP and the National Crime Agency. And the AFP commenced as chair of the VGT in November of 2024. We're very honoured to hold this role, this important role, and as founding members of the VGT, chairing is an opportunity to showcase the work that the AFP does in this space, but leverage off our international partners in terms of the fight against this heinous crime. So in terms of key priorities that we'll drive in relation to this work and very topical to the current threat environment in relation to this crime type, firstly will be statistic online exploitation, that unfortunately we're seeing an increased prevalence on that, impacting particularly on the younger generation in Australia. The issue of financial sextortion, which again, unfortunately, we're seeing an increased prevalence. The real issue of artificial intelligence, in terms of artificial intelligence being utilised to generate CAM material, we're getting to the stage where it's incredibly difficult for us to determine whether the image is real or it's been generated. And technology solutions, because I think a key threat in this area is technology in terms of the challenges we have. But that also provides law enforcement with, I think, some small advantage that we can use that technology in terms of combating this crime. A really important component, I think it's fair to say that the 15 countries involved in this has been generally focused mainly on Europe, the Five Eyes, the US and Canada. The work that Deputy Commissioner Gale is doing, particularly at the minute, in terms of that outreach and engagement through the Pacific, through our chair of the VGT, we're placing significant importance in terms of building those relationships in the Pacific with our Pacific policing partners to combat that crime in that area. Thanks.
Thank you. I can say that in a recent visit that I had overseas, the reputation of the AUSP in this area goes beyond our borders, but there are some challenges in relation to social media platforms and end-to-end encryption. What's the response been with your engagement with social media platforms like Meta and Snapchat? And are there other ways that you can collaborate with other law enforcements globally to try and address these challenges?
Well, I think it's a team approach, Senator, in terms of working with agencies in Australia. This includes the Attorney General's Department, a range of other agencies that have pivot points into particularly the US, because the majority of these companies are based in the US in terms of that engagement. So it's very much leveraging off the support we receive from the other agencies. I think on the issue of end-to-end encryption, we've been on the record to say we're concerned in terms of the ability, in terms of receiving, particularly from companies such as Facebook, if they move to a full end-to-end encryption, the ability for them to refer matters to the AFP where they identify online child exploitation. We have some real concerns and we voice those concerns. I think these companies have acknowledged that they're going to move to end-to-end encryption, but they've highlighted the fact they still have a focus on an ability to work with law enforcement. Going back to the VGT, the power of those 15 international law enforcement agencies, so it's just not the AFP engaging with these countries, we can force multiply, and it's effectively 15 different countries and law enforcement agencies that will continue to engage these companies. In some respects, hold them to account in terms of the promises that have been made in terms of the ongoing support to law enforcement.
Thank you for that. Are there any gaps in the current legal legislative framework that you would see that if there were changes made there? Are there any recommendations on what more can be done?
Well, I think the real challenge for us is technology is changing so quickly. The Commissioner's heard me say this before. When I joined the AFP 35 years ago, we had a typing pool, Senator, and that's not to show my age, although I think it does. But it highlighted...
Typing pool.
It's only a number. It's only a number.
It highlighted when I joined the organisation all the crimes that I investigated was in the real world. The majority of crimes we investigate now in the AFP and child online exploitation is a perfect example, is fully online, or our other crime types have a strong connection to the online construct. So I think there's three broad issues or challenges we face. Firstly is big data, the amount of data that's actually out there, the amount of data that I can store on my phone compared with, I think in 2 or 3 or 4 years' time will exponentially increase. So that'll be a challenge for law enforcement. AI, in terms of the real concern for us, and the Commissioner has been on the record on this, that the opportunity cost, our focus is obviously focusing on high priority matters where we believe a child is at risk. But if that child is an AI image and not a real child, we could spend 6-12 months investigating that matter. So the ability for us to counteract that. And then the issue of encryption in terms of what we do with this space. What I can say, we have a very productive relationship with the AGD, with the Attorney General's Department in terms of the legislative reform, because the environment's changing so quickly. We continue to work with AGDs, and there's been recent legislative reform in relation to this area, particularly in relation to AI and deepfakes. We'll continue to be incredibly proactive in terms of identifying the changing environment and working with our partners.
So if we look at the increase in sextortion, we're looking at the challenges around AI, we're looking at end-to-end encryption, the speed of technology. There's some huge challenges there. How many staff do you have in your department that is dealing with child exploitation?
We have a lot, and we haven't been funded by government in terms of increases over the last couple of years. I think every senior officer that would sit here, Senator, if you said, would you like more resources, you know what the response is going to be. I think we've been effectively funded. The challenge for us is being effective and efficient in that environment. The crime threat environment is changing so quickly, and so how do we respond to that? So I think my answer to that is, I think we've got the right building blocks in place. I think you've had the pleasure of attending the ACE in Brisbane, and I do note Deputy Commissioner Gale was the forerunner of that in terms of establishing the ACE in Brisbane. I think we've got the building blocks in place. It is an incredibly challenging environment and will continue to be challenging.
So how many officers do you have working in this area?
Yeah, I'll take that on notice, Senator. I'll try and get back to you before the end of this hearing.
So the challenges are great. The technology is moving very quickly. You have to have qualified expert officers working this area. Not everyone can work in this area. So I appreciate the fact that you say you've been well-resourced and supported. But the reality is, if there's a cut to those resources, that's going to have a direct impact on our community and the challenges that you fight every single day. Would that be a fair assessment? I'm not asking you for an opinion on the 20% that's going to come your way, but I'm just asking, any cut is going to have an impact.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it means that we'd have to reprioritise our resources, and that could lead to children being sexually abused that we can't get to. So for us, that particular crime type, and having worked in it myself, you have incredibly passionate and committed people who, I don't even know how they do it in today's world, because the volume that our people have to watch, see, understand, and then have real victims. And you've seen some of our operations, like Operation Tenterfield and others, nationwide and global operations that we're running. It's quite incredible what our people do and what they have to go through. If you haven't ever seen this is not what people think it is. And that's why we call it child abuse, not child pornography, because it's way worse than what you realise. And I think it's remarkable the work that our people do, and if anything, we need to increase our resources in that area.
So my final question?
Yes, thank you.
If we just take AI and the amount of time and the expertise, and hopefully develop technology that can actually identify whether it's fake or not, the reality is, if people are actually using AI material and that is being shared, that is still a crime.
Correct.
And still has to stop. So my question is, are there people working on detection of AI?
Yes. I think, and I noted the work of the VGT. I think, I like to think we're world leading, and we've got some people sitting in this room that have been instrumental in that. But that ability to work through the Virtual Global Task Force and leverage off the capabilities of other agencies. So again, the issue of AI is a threat, but it's also an opportunity for law enforcement to utilise AI. We very much acknowledge that we need to be responsible, and we've got strict guidelines in place, but we need to embrace AI in terms of the work they do, the investigative work. But I think even from a welfare perspective, I don't like looking at those images. I can't look at those images, Senator, and I think our people have to look at those images on a daily basis. So the work we're doing at the minute in terms of using AI and technology to reduce our investigators to looking at those images is incredibly important work, and will continue to be innovative in driving that space.
If I know time, sorry,
Yeah,
Chair.
no,
Just,
really.
if it's okay, really quickly, just to assist with the Senator's question. One of the ways we are addressing the issue of AI is partnerships, not just partnerships with law enforcement, but ethical partnerships with universities and other academia, specifically looking at AI and how we, in an ethical context, can utilise it to counter some of the challenges that we're currently seeing in that space.
Thank you.
Thanks very
Chair.
much. Thank you. We're going to try to work through this very long list. Senator David Pocock, you have the call.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for your time here this evening. I continue to be concerned about cultural issues that I'm hearing from people in the AFP and the number of officers who are having to seek Comcare, and acknowledge that Comcare is another issue in and of itself. But just looking at some of the things that we've discussed here over the last few years, in 2022, less than half of the AFP surveyed had faith in senior leadership. That question was then omitted in 2023, and I remember Senator Shoebridge asking a lot of questions about that. You said that it would be part of your 2024 In Focus staff survey, but I haven't been able to find that published anywhere. Has that been published?
I'm happy to give an update on that, Senator. Thank you for the question. Catherine Van Gert, Chief Operating Officer. Yes, we are very committed to creating a safe and psychological safe workplace. As you know, we've talked about it before. In terms of our survey, we didn't omit it from the 2023 survey. As we've talked about in this forum previously, we conducted a deep dive that year around psychological safety to better understand some of the feedback that our staff had given us in that 2022 survey. We are committed to hearing from our workforce. That's what we want to hear. We want to hear what's going on, how we can fix things. We currently have the staff survey out to our workforce. It closes next Sunday after being open for 3 weeks.
Sorry, Ms Van Gert, can I just confirm that's the 2024 staff survey?
We don't label it by year, but that's our full staff census survey that we're currently out to market.
We're
currently out to survey.
Previous estimates, you told Senator Shoebridge that would be part of your 2024 survey.
Correct. That is correct, Senator. We did.
What happened last year?
So last year, the plan was, when I answered that question at Senate estimates earlier last year, that we would run the survey late last year. As you'd be aware from our previous appearances last year, we were undertaking a protracted industrial relations enterprise bargaining process. We made a decision as an agency that it would be too much of a burden to ask, and insensitive really, to ask our staff questions around their perceptions of in the workplace when they were undergoing these protracted discussions and negotiations. So the decision was made to run it this year, but it has gone out to, as I said, it's currently out. It closes this Sunday, and so, as previously, we'll be publishing the results.
And so there was no look at. There was no survey last year at all?
There were multiple surveys, including a survey that we undertook of our entire workforce post our first EA vote to understand their sentiments at the time and why they voted the way they did at that time. So yes, we did do surveys, not on the questions you're going to, correct.
That's what I'm asking.
Yep, not a full staff census survey, that's correct.
Okay. I mean, I accept your explanation about the negotiations, but I think for an agency that's clearly struggling with culture, maybe I'll move on. The AFP Health and Wellbeing Strategy. Yes. What's the update there?
So I'd just first like to correct the statement that we're struggling with culture. I don't agree with that. I think we've got a very strong culture. I think the surveys that we do have, the people do like working for us. They value the goals that the AFP have, and they feel a real commitment to that. In terms of our health and wellbeing strategy, you'll be pleased to know that has been signed off. Our board endorsed that strategy earlier this month, our new health and wellbeing strategy beyond 2024. We're currently in the process of developing the communications for that, and that will be launched in the coming weeks to our workforce. Are you able to
table that strategy?
I'll take that on notice. I don't have a copy with me, but more than happy to table that on notice.
And how much funding has the AFP allocated to implementing the strategy?
So the strategy is delivered and implemented within our team. We have a dedicated team within our People Command. In addition to that, as I've talked previously about, we have an ongoing relationship with the Australian Human Rights Commission that we've had in place for over 5 years. We're in negotiations with them at the moment to continue that partnership for an extended period of time, but over the last 5 years we have invested $3.4 million to the AHRC in that important partnership that we have with them. We're currently working on developing a cultural framework with them, and part of that we are re-looking at a refresh of our AFP values, and we'll be undertaking consultation across our workforce on that as well.
I think, Senator, to explain that a little bit deeper, we actually have and have had the AHRC embedded actually into our organisation, who are assisting us with the strategies on how we can improve the culture. Okay. So that's really important to highlight, because we've opened up our entire organisation, and we have for the last 5 years, and that seems to get misunderstood, that we're not trying to actually improve our culture. We are actively, but as you know, in any team sport, you do have cultural issues that sometimes you have to work it out. And one of the things that we've been doing is, what are the programs that we can offer different people? Because not everyone wants the same program of support or need the same program of support. Sure. If we listed off the numbers of things that we provide our members, I think that would actually help you assist a better viewpoint.
Thank you, Commissioner. We're really tight on time. Sorry. So I'm interested, how will you be measuring progress and outcomes of this new strategy? And just want to highlight, I think it was over a year ago that the old strategy lapsed, and we've had a year where there's just kind of been this interim while the strategy still holds, but it's not actually the strategy. So now that we have this new strategy, how are you actually going to be measuring, is this thing working?
Yep, thank you, Senator. Thank you for the question. So just to confirm that the previous strategy did stay in force until we launched the new one. In terms of evaluation of our former strategy, we reviewed that strategy as part of the development of our new strategy.
But sorry, can I just, there was nothing measurable in your last health and wellbeing strategy, so but you've just evaluated it after the fact.
No, so the last strategy had 42 actions, 37 of those were completed and 5 remain in progress and have carried on to the next strategy as well. They're longer term actions. What the evaluation did show, though, is that there are limitations on the data set. We're one of the world leading, certainly Australia leading agencies in terms of the SHIELD program, health and wellbeing program that we've rolled out across our agency. So we really are building data sets as we go.
Can I ask on that, in questions on notice, you wouldn't tell me how many current and former employees have accessed SHIELD, how many have?
Have accessed SHIELD?
Yes.
I'll have to take that on notice, Senator.
Okay. And then just, I guess I hear what you're saying, but it seems like there's this big disconnect in the AFP where you turn up, you tell me one thing, and then I literally have people crying in my office about the way they've been treated and their mates have been treated. And so I'm interested, like, what is actually going on? I mean, your Comcare claims are going up. They're at 33.1 per 1,000 FTE compared to 27.3 2 years ago.
That's not such a bad thing. That means that you can look at it in different ways, that there's more confidence in the system for people who are struggling mentally, and it may not be at work, it's always at work. You know, I don't want to go into further detail on this because we could talk all day about it, but it may be worthwhile that you sitting down with our people that help administer some of these programs, our SHIELD people, to understand have a deeper viewpoint and data points on what we actually are doing.
But Commissioner, how are we meant to know that if you won't even tell me how many people have accessed your SHIELD program?
So what I can say,
I've asked that on notice before, and I get donuts from you.
Okay, we'll take that on notice. Again, I don't have that in front of me today, Senator, but what I can advise is that since 2020-21, when SHIELD was introduced, we have had a 24% increase in the uptake of people, our members accessing early intervention services, which is key to us bringing down those Comcare claims. We've also had a 23% reduction in accepted workers' compensation claims during that time since the introduction of SHIELD. So we're seeing some benefits. We continue to drive that strong focus on safety culture, introducing a compliance and regulatory engagement role. We're continuing to focus on our collaboration with Comcare. I'm aware of media articles. I'm aware of the stories that members are telling and the not positive interactions that they're having, and we want to help with that. So we are working with Comcare to fast-track claims as much as we can, and so the ongoing implementation of our strategy is what we can do at our end, but we're keen to hear those stories from members so that we can improve.
Okay, and can I ask about exit interviews? In May 2023, you told me that you were refreshing your exit survey process so you could, and I'll quote, get more robust data.
Yep.
Essentially actually asking officers why they're leaving. And then on notice you told me the timeline for implementing a refresh AFP exit survey is December 2023.
Yep.
But I've had people telling me that that's not happening. What is happening?
Yep. Thank you for the question, Senator. So to clarify previous evidence I may have given, we have always had an exit interview. It just wasn't a formal process in the system. So since July last year, it is now a formal process in the system that is more automated. So it allows us to get greater access to the data. So we do have about 7 months worth of that data available. What we are seeing is, in terms of our sworn departures, approximately 38% of those are due to retirements. One of the main reasons that people say they want to leave is work-life balance in terms of our sworn members. So it's giving an avenue for us to collate that data to understand how we can best support our members to increase retention where we need to.
Ms Van Gerb, could I get that data on notice?
Yes.
What percentage of
Senator.
I beg your pardon?
Maybe if you have 2 more minutes and then I'll
Great, thank you. I'll go quickly. What percentage of people leaving the AFP are having had an exit interview since you've instigated a more robust data collection?
I'll have to take that one on notice, Senator.
Okay. We
certainly have had more responses than previously when it was quite informal and was done by supervisors.
Great, thank you. And then just finally, thank you for responding to some of my questions on notice in relation to travel. However, you're one of the very few agencies who refuse to answer questions about SES travel on Qantas versus Virgin versus other airlines. And I'm just wondering why you can't provide this data, but basically all the other departments and agencies can.
So, Senator, I believe in response to the question on notice, we have provided data in terms of our entire agency's travel on domestic flights.
After SES?
Qantas, yeah. In terms of SES, from what I'm advised, our system doesn't allow us to pull the data in that way.
But everyone else does?
Yes, so
okay.
the AFP system hasn't allowed us to pull that data. Is that an issue? With
the system, that you can't just search that way?
Pardon?
Is that an issue with your system that you can't search that way?
Well, we have a very robust travel policy in place that defines the fact that members are expected to undertake the best fare of the day, whether that be Qantas, Virgin or another carrier. Our policy also dictates that it's against policy to receive an upgrade. I know that's an area of interest for you. So we wouldn't be able to take the upgrade, and if that happened to be given and not able to be declined, then it would have to be declared as a gift and benefit. So I'm quite comfortable that the AFP's governance around this in terms of the process that we put in place for people to have travel approval is sound.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so... Okay. I guess just on that, I'm interested, if you can't take flight upgrades, why did the answer just say the AFP does not have access to flight upgrade data?
So we can't pull that from our system because that's information that would sit with an airline system, but what I can say is our policy dictates that members cannot accept an upgrade. So if they did, they would have to declare it.
And have any been declared?
No, not that I'm aware of, but I'll take that on notice to confirm.
Yeah. Thanks, Senator. Senator Van.
Thank you, Chair. And Commissioner and team, thank you very much for appearing again before us. Much appreciated, and sorry we're running so late into the evening. Commissioner, earlier in the day I tabled some correspondence, in particular a letter to you dated 20 January 2025 from the Australian Federal Police Association's Chief Legal Counsel, Giles Snedker. You received that correspondence?
No, Senator Van, you tabled it earlier with the Attorney General's portfolio, but
Isn't that tabling it for the committee?
No, but that doesn't mean that the Commissioner would have seen that document. The document would have been circulated to committee members like myself and other members at the table, but they might have knowledge of the document otherwise.
Thank you, Senator. I forgot to introduce myself before. Lisa Gale, Deputy Commissioner. I am aware of the correspondence that you're referring to.
Thank you, Ms Giles. But Commissioner, you're not aware of it, even though it was addressed to you? And at that point, I might ask the Secretariat to circulate it.
I think I am, yes.
Terrific. Thank you for confirming that. Commissioner, in that correspondence, it talks about that Mr Snedker had become aware of the initial criminal investigation into the conduct of 4 senior AFP members over the management and production of the body of works. This was for Bulwark 58 operatives. Can you tell us the nature of that investigation, please, Commissioner?
Senator, I will take that question as the head of unit for professional standards, and I do refer you to previous evidence, both in hearings and questions on notice in relation to these questions, and that I won't be answering questions about PRS investigations in a public hearing.
Not even general ones. These aren't specific ones.
I won't be answering questions about ongoing PRS investigations.
So you've just confirmed one of my next questions, that it's ongoing?
That's on the record, yes, I've confirmed that previously.
And can you tell the committee who is conducting the inquiry or the investigation?
I've confirmed it's a PRS investigation, so sitting within our Professional Standards Command.
So AFP are investigating AFP senior members?
It's our Professional Standards Command. We have a very robust integrity framework, which is overseen by the Ombudsman.
Thank you, Ms Barrett. The correspondence was responded to by you, Ms Gale, is that right?
That's correct, Senator.
In your response, you say that the AFP is, and Chair, would you like me to table this letter, knowing that the witness wrote the letter?
Only if the Commissioner needs a copy, we don't need it.
I'll be putting my questions to Scale if that assists. I left mine on the printer, but I can forward it.
I have a copy of it.
Great.
So you're comfortable?
Yes.
Thank you. In your letter, you state the AFP is satisfied it has in place appropriate risk and threat mitigation strategies and is well placed to manage any security issues. There is no identified direct or implied threat to the safety of B58 members. Is that a fair reflection of what you wrote?
That's correct.
You talk about direct and implied threats.
Yes.
Are they the only types of threats that can arise to an undercover operative or an ex-undercover operative?
Can you perhaps be a bit more specific?
To me, in that language, it is stating that there is a positive action that you can see and measure, whereas a threat as we all know, can arise without notice, without being implied or having some grounding in something that you could investigate or see in a physical or data sense.
Senator, I would just reinforce the views that or the position conveyed in the response to the AFPA, in that there is no perceived or direct threat. We continue through a robust structure and architecture for how we assess risk and threats, and remain open to reviewing and revisiting any concerns by members if they are, prepared to raise any new concerns that they may have in relation to what they perceive as threats to themselves. I've said that repeatedly. I've corresponded on 4 separate occasions indicating this, that I remain open to continuing to review the concerns of the members if they provide new, and I just restate, there has not been anything new to warrant any new response to the concerns. But if the members can bring forward something, we remain open, and will, I encourage anyone, I will review any new information.
And Senator, I might just add that we did undertake a review. We had an external person undertake a review of the Project Bulwark capability, which, as you would be aware, is the capability that is responsible for addressing threats of harm to current and former members. There was a review undertaken in 2023 to ensure that it remains fit for purpose. That review found that the structure, the resourcing and the processes of Project Bulwark are adequate. It did identify some opportunities for ongoing enhancement. All of those recommendations have been implemented.
And Senator, if I just could add, the AFP spends thousands upon thousands of hours ensuring that the identity of our undercover operatives is protected. The safety and well-being of our undercover operatives, both in the past and in the present, is of paramount importance to us. And certainly for me personally, as the Deputy Commissioner in charge of the undercover program at the moment, it is my #1 priority.
And Ms Gale, I don't doubt that, but you weren't in charge at the time that these operatives were undercover or exited the undercover program, were you?
No.
No. And we've heard many times that there is glaring holes in the threat assessments that were done on them, particularly the revised one. There was one that said that threats were probable, if not certain, and then all of a sudden there was a revised one that said no threats perceived, perceived being the operative word. In that revised threat assessment, why were why was organised crime and outlaw motorcycle gangs removed as threat vectors?
Senator, I'll refer you back to my comment earlier. We have given previous evidence in relation to this matter, both in hearings and questions on notice. And I have repeatedly said that I am uncomfortable discussing these matters in a public hearing for 2 reasons. One is it goes to the methodology of a very sensitive capability, which is charged with protecting our members both now and into the future. Second, it goes to an ongoing PRS investigation, and my responsibility with the PRS investigation is to the complainants who have made the complaint to the AFP and have trusted us to investigate it with integrity, and that's what we're doing. So I'm not comfortable having anything further on the public record for those 2 reasons.
Ms Barrett, firstly, I haven't asked this question before, so you cannot claim that. Secondly, the investigation started well after I started asking questions of the organisation about this. So on both those legs, your claim falls over. Now, at the time when these operatives exited, there was no meaningful exit strategy, was there?
Senator, my position remains the same. I'm not comfortable answering these questions in a public hearing for the reasons that I've outlined.
Ms Barrett, I know you're not comfortable. This must be a very uncomfortable situation for the AFP. You're investigating your own people over a failure to keep your own members safe. That would be very uncomfortable.
Senator, that's your categorisation, that's not mine, but my position remains for reasons that I think I've fairly clearly outlined as to why it's not appropriate in this forum.
No, you think it's not appropriate, but this committee has a right to investigate these matters, and you must allow us to do that or put forward a PII.
Senator, the PRS investigation needs to continue unheeded and unimpeded so that we can, as I said, fulfil the obligation to the complainants who have come to us and trusted us to undertake the investigation.
But they don't trust you. That's the problem. And any future undercover operatives are going to struggle to feel that they can trust you to look after their safety and well-being. And as I said before, I've been asking these questions well before the PRS investigation started, and my questions weren't answered then. So I don't believe that you've got a strong case to say that you won't answer them now.
Senator, if I could just add, in relation to your comments regarding future undercover operatives, I can say to you that we have a very robust system in place to provide support to both current and looking forward future operatives, utilising SHIELD, utilising psychologists. We also undertake regular assessments on our operatives to ensure that we are monitoring and we continue to reassess their well-being, and we have psychologists embedded in place within our program specifically to ensure that we are maintaining the well-being of our operatives. Can I also
Ms. Gale, sorry, no, I'm going to lose a call soon, so can I cut you off there? Hopefully not rudely. Isn't the fact that you need to have psychologists on hand testimony that the process isn't robust, because people are only going to have psychological impacts from their undercover work if they can't exit safely?
No, Senator, I don't agree with that. What
really?
I would say what I would say to you is there are a number of high-risk areas across our organisation. We're a policing agency, and a number of activities that our officers undertake, not just in the undercover operations space.
And for general members, I think it's a wonderful thing, and you should be congratulated for that. But we are talking about a very small cohort of your members, and there was no exit strategy in place. There continues to be no exit strategy in place. Even the most basic things that you would expect to be given to an exiting member in terms of what might happen, for example, we talked about direct and indirect or implied threats. What happens if they bump into an ex-POI out the street? How is that taken into account? Please.
And I'm not every police officer in Australia has that fear.
But it's a different level if you've been undercover and deceiving these people. Well, there are organised crime that would have their own mottos about that.
I understand that, but you think about it, police officers, we don't often go to places because we don't want to be identified. And I understand that. So I understand that our undercovers, and I understand what you're saying, but we all carry that.
Commissioner,
including for when you have to go on holidays, when you have to do all of that, it can be challenging. And I think the two deputies are handling this the best that we can with the issues that we have. And they are looking at the human side of it and how can we resolve this.
Senator Van, I need to rotate the call. So you've got one more question, and I'll do that.
Commissioner, that effectively, says to me, and I agree, it's a dangerous job, we all accept
It is.
And no question about that. But undercover is particularly dangerous. And the fact that you say, and bundle everyone up together, sort of screams that, that there is not specific treatment or exit strategies in place for undercover operatives, and there certainly wasn't for these people. And I still today cannot understand why you or the Attorney General have not taken steps to ensure their safety. I'll leave it there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we've traversed these questions a number of times. We do need to move on. Senator Faruqi has a couple of questions, and then we'll hand the call to Senator Patterson after that. And then get around. So, Senator Faruqi.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. On the AFP website, if you go to the page Report a Crime, you can select a number of crimes. And anti-Semitism is on that list of crimes, but there is no mention of Islamophobia or any other sort of hate crimes. If you go to the AFP page, which says crimes we are combating, it's the same story. A number of crimes, anti-Semitism is on there, Islamophobia is not. If you search the site with the word Islamophobia, it says no content on a website matched your search. We know that Islamophobia is on the rise. The Islamophobia Register has, in their latest report, says that there has been an increase of 540% in Islamophobic incidents reported to the register over the last 16 months. So why doesn't this website include Islamophobia? What's the reason for that? Or is the AFP of the same view as Senator Sharma, who says that Islamophobia is fictitious, or Senator Henderson, who thinks that there is no issue with Islamophobia in this country?
Sorry, Chair, I just want to take a point of order.
What is the point of order?
I just think it's grossly unfair for Senator Faruqi to refer to some of our colleagues in that way in their absence. I just think it's unnecessary for the legitimate question Senator Faruqi raises.
No, it's a legitimate question. Senator Scarr, you should probably review the comments of your own colleagues in another committee today and reflect on that before we get into a tit for tat about who said what about different colleagues. Senator Faruqi, I'll let you put your question, and then we can get an answer from the Commissioner for you.
Thank you, Chair. So my question is there a reason for not including Islamophobia anywhere on your website as a crime? And what is the reason?
Senator, can I just provide assurance? Obviously, the AFP, we target criminality regardless of race, religion, ideology. So that's the first point that I want to make very clear. And we do have a range of investigations specific to a range of communities, religions, races. The configuration of the website that you're referring to is partly to assist us to triage for Operation Avalite, which is the operation, as you would be aware, that was commenced in December last year, in order for us to facilitate a quick triage to that task force. But Assistant Commissioner Nutt will provide a few additional points as well.
That's not a reason, though, not to include Islamophobia in there.
I think I can assist, Senator. And I don't want to exactly share everything. We have been working on a protocol with the Islamic community. I'm not going to say which community. There's a number of those communities, and I've been personally in contact with those communities, and they're working through that process and what does it look like for them. And I can reassure you that we put as much emphasis on any of these crimes, no matter what your background is and what your religious beliefs are. We don't discriminate. And I don't want to talk about this particular thing because it's still ongoing and it's very sensitive because we're actually trying to break some new ground on information sharing between law enforcement and the community in a new framework.
So is it something separate? So I guess my question is, it still doesn't answer my question, sorry, why Islamophobia or any other sorts of hate crimes are not included here, even a broad category of hate crimes. would be useful for the community. I mean, I come from that same community.
I understand.
Yeah. Okay. Just another question. Does the AFP conduct anti-racism training for all its staff?
In terms of Senator, in terms of specific anti-racism training in our foundational training, and I'm sure there's others at the table can comment as well. Obligations, legal obligations in the respectful workplace, obviously in relation to the Racial Discrimination Act requirements, and of course in operational police officers are involved in identifying and assessing what is described as hate crimes, and also particularly in the Counter-Terrorism Command, the cultural and awareness training that we do in support of our community engagement activities and identifying what is obvious and veiled hate speech and hate crimes is part of our work. We work very closely with community to identify those issues, and if I may just circle back briefly on your previous question, the Deputy correctly identified around the website and relating to the Special Operation Avalite, but I can assure, and I engage the community on these issues as well, is that Islamophobia and other hate crimes are given equal priority in terms of investigative response, the same criteria that we consider with the nuance around Commonwealth nexus, focusing on known hate mongers, if I can use that term. It's not a technical one, but to identify those who need to be disrupted is maintained as a focus of the Counter-Terrorism Special Investigations Command, and it's something that we deal with our state and territory partners as well, Senator.
You didn't answer my question though. Does the AFP conduct anti-racism training for all its staff?
Well, I thought I did to the extent there wasn't.
But cultural awareness training is not anti-racism training.
Yeah, Senator, we have a range of mandatory online training that our staff have to do across a range of different legislation. I believe that the Discrimination Act and responsibilities under that is part of it, but I will take it on notice, the exact training course that we do and the extent of that, and come back to you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Patterson, we're back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Barrett, your final answer to my previous bracket of questions highlighted a fair point, which is there are differences between different cases, even if they may seem similar on the face of it, and that may explain why a different response is warranted to public comments. As we've explored, the Prime Minister did make public comments about when he was briefed in relation to the Adus synagogue, even though it was an ongoing investigation and remains an ongoing investigation. What are the differences between the Adus incident and the Dural Caravan incident that explain the necessity of that different approach?
Thank you, Senator, and I will refer you back to some of the language that the Commissioner used in his opening statement, specifically that providing detail, whether it may seem innocuous to others or not, can have a critical impact on investigations, including giving suspects an insight about what we knew, when we knew it, what we were doing with it, what that triggered. So hence, I know it is frustrating that it may seem like an innocuous detail, but in actual fact, we are gravely concerned for the integrity of the operation if we were to provide detail along those lines.
You're gravely concerned about the integrity of the operation if you tell me when ministers or the Prime Minister was briefed about it.
That's correct.
You have to explain why. That makes no sense to any kind of normal independent observer who's watching this. They would think that makes no sense. Why?
And Senator, I understand that for people who don't have the knowledge and the details of the investigation, how we're progressing that investigation, what sort of tools and strategies we're using in that investigation. So I do understand, as I've said, to people in the community and members of the public, and indeed yourself, that you would take that view, but you don't have the information that we have in terms of the investigation.
Okay, let's go to another example then. Following the Waverley church stabbing incident, the following morning the Prime Minister went on ABC Radio Melbourne and he said, and I quote, "We will have a meeting of the National Security Committee this morning. I was briefed by the head of the Australian Federal Police, Commissioner Kershaw, and the Director General of ASIO early this morning, and we'll be having that meeting." That was a live terrorism investigation at that time. I think it was declared a terrorism incident by New South Wales Police at 1:30 or so in the morning. So why could the Prime Minister disclose in that instance the timing of his briefings, but not in this one?
Senator, I'll take you back to my previous point about it's a case-by-case scenario and no two matters are the same. The matter you're referring to there is quite different to the matter, the other matter that you're seeking information on, but I'm not comfortable providing any further detail around as to why, because if I was to do that, it would put information into the public that would impact our investigation.
Also, I know it's a matter of framing the question in a different way, but the AFP can't answer questions about what the Prime Minister said or what he didn't say. That's a question for PM&C, I think. The AFP can answer questions to you about their conduct and otherwise. I think they've...
Thank you. I'm testing the proposition that the AFP has advanced that the public disclosure of the timing of briefing of a politician is prejudicial to investigations, and I'm citing some other examples, and I want to move on to another one. The AFP was involved with your partners at ASIO in arresting alleged Russian spies who were serving in the ADF, and following those media reports on the 12th of July last year, the Prime Minister said, "Well, I've been briefed extensively by our security agencies, including the AFP, including as late as this morning, but also previously I spoke to Commissioner Kershaw prior to the press conference. They've outlined the details." This seems like yet another case where no harm has been done to an investigation, unless you correct me, by a disclosure of the timing of a briefing. Is that the case?
Senator, again, I'll refer you back to my previous comment about every matter is different and we have different considerations that we need to take into account. And to reinforce the Commissioner's opening statement, we won't apologise that we're prioritising the investigation because our job is to put offenders before the court. That's what we're focused on doing.
Okay, so the information I'm seeking is the timing of when a politician was briefed. Commissioner, I want to point you to your statement on the 21st of January about anti-Semitism. There's very welcome sentiment in that about the way in which you and the AFP abhor anti-Semitism and will act on it. But also in that press release, you said, and I quote, "All lines of inquiry are open to investigations, including what anonymising technology, such as dedicated encrypted communications devices, have been used to commit these crimes. We are looking into whether overseas actors or individuals have paid local criminals in Australia to carry out some of these crimes in our suburbs. We are looking at if or how they have been paid, for example, in cryptocurrency, which can take longer to identify. We are looking into whether any young people are involved in carrying out some of these crimes and if they've been radicalised online and encouraged to commit anti-Semitic acts." That's a lot more information about ongoing investigations than I'm seeking. It goes to the motivations, it goes to the communications, it goes to the payment, it goes to criminal associations. It's a highly detailed statement about active investigations. I'm not seeking that, just when a politician was briefed. Why was your comment, your press release, not prejudicial, but telling me about a politician's briefing would be?
I mean, I could talk all day about this, Senator.
Please do.
Same question.
You know, it goes back to our operational strategy, and that's all I'll say to keep it succinct.
It's certainly succinct, but it doesn't answer the question.
Well, it does. From our point of view, how we operate, it does. And I, as respectfully as I say this, you're not a police officer investigating these crimes. Maybe we could bring you along one day, and we do ride-alongs and other things like that, to probably show you a bit deeper about the thinking that goes into how deep we go into our thinking about operational strategies and how we actually gather the evidence to be able to prosecute someone down the track, not just disrupt them. So there's a lot of effort that goes into our operational strategies.
I don't doubt that, but I find it difficult to accept that putting into the public domain uncorroborated potential lines of inquiry is in no way prejudicial to investigations, but simply sharing the fact of when a politician was briefed would be prejudicial. I don't think any fair observer, including, by the way, much more experienced national security experts than me, including former police officers who've been involved in this, who've publicly commented about their scepticism about the reason why this needs to be kept secret.
Yeah. There is no scepticism. It's pretty simple, and I just sort of also can see your point from where you're sitting, that you would see it that way, and you've just got to, it's a bit corny, but you've just got to trust us on this one, Senator.
Okay. Let me ask you, let's set the caravan incident specifically aside. Since the public commentary about this issue and the reporting about this issue, have either the Minister or the Prime Minister expressed any dissatisfaction to you about the timeliness of AFP briefings?
I've not had a nasty phone call or anything like that.
Text message, an email, a meeting, the PMO, the Attorney General's office?
I don't know what happens behind the scenes. You know, when I walk out of the room, maybe they do say something.
No, I mean to you or to your senior officers?
My team do that.
To you or your senior officers, or through the DLO in their offices, has anyone expressed dissatisfaction about the timeliness of AFP briefings?
Not to my knowledge.
To the knowledge of anyone else at the table?
Not to my knowledge.
No? Okay. Well, have there been any changes made or any consideration given to the thresholds for reporting incidents to ministers?
No, because we have a very flexible system, I think, as Assistant Commissioner Nutt and Deputy Commissioner Barrett explained, and there's reasons for that, and I think we explained those as well.
Okay. Well, I fear I'm not going to get much further here, and I do look forward to police getting to the bottom of this incident, and when you are free to do so, after those charges have been laid, understanding your thinking about why this timing can't be disclosed when it has been on so many other occasions. But I will move on to some other topics now, if I still have the call.
Okay, if I hand the call to
Yes.
Senator Pocock, and then we can always come back.
That's fair.
Thank you,
Senator Barbara Pocock, you have the call.
I have questions that relate to Operation Alicia. I think Mr Nutt has dealt with them historically.
That's correct, Senator.
So,
question, of course.
Mr Nutt, last estimates.
You just have to change your name.
You're not Ms Lisa Gale, I'm assuming.
What they do is they go undercover.
Thank you.
So, Mr Nutt, last estimates, you gave us details of the AFP investigation into PwC, also known as Operation Alicia. At the time, the AFP had just raided the Sydney offices of PwC. Can you provide the Parliament with an update on that investigation?
First of all, Senator, the AFP doesn't raid. We execute search warrants in furtherance of criminal investigations. I can say that we obviously completed that search. We have undertaken other search warrant activity in furtherance of that investigation. The investigation is ongoing, and I can say that it's not a good time for us to talk into specific details of an ongoing investigation. Needless to say, as a reinforcement to you, Senator, that it is ongoing and progressing.
Do you have a sense of when we might expect finalisation or a public statement about outcomes?
At an appropriate time, we'll certainly do so. We're obviously as keen as you are, Senator, but we're progressing.
You're progressing?
Yes.
Have you undertaken any other, or exercised any other search warrants since you were here last?
Yes, I have. Not me personally, our team.
How many?
I won't go into those sort of details, but I will say that we have executed additional search warrants, yes.
At the office of PwC or elsewhere?
Again, that's a detail on an ongoing operation. What point of difference to my last briefing is that by the time I appeared, Senator, our activity was already in the public domain through media reporting, so I felt comfortable to be able to explain it. Those other actions that we have taken are not in the public domain, so I'm uncomfortable in discussing at this point in time.
We know that whether it's the Senate, the ATO, the Tax Practitioners Board or the AFP, PwC have tried to obscure and conceal vital information at every step. You previously have said that PwC were cooperating with authorities, at least initially. Is that still the case?
That's still a fair assessment, Senator, and note that we had taken, and we're aware of those other activities that you described, and we've taken that into account in terms of our strategy and engagement with.
How has it
PwC.
affected your strategy?
Well, being aware of it, of course, we are the due diligence that we apply to how we engage with both individuals under investigation and witnesses and others. We're aware of that.
Last estimates, you said that PwC had not yet claimed any professional privilege. Is that still correct?
It is still accurate, but I don't know whether I actually said any. So I will take that on notice, Senator. I still think it's accurate.
You believe they have not as yet, either before last estimates or since to today, claimed any professional legal privilege?
Correct. I'll just take that on notice to be sure. I don't want to mislead you in any way, Senator.
Thank you. I previously asked you about what the penalty is for destroying evidence. You advised in question on notice response SBE 24051 that it's an offence under Section 39 of the Crimes Act for a person to destroy evidence. The penalty for this is, I understand, imprisonment for 5 years.
Correct.
Have you had any indication that PwC has attempted to destroy or withdraw evidence from the AFP?
Not that I'm aware of, Senator.
Thank you. Last estimates, you revealed that Operation Alicia is examining whether former PwC partners breached Section 70 and 135 of the Crimes Act. And you said there were multiple offences on the warrant, including disclosure of information by Commonwealth officials, general dishonesty causing risk of loss, conspiracy to defraud dishonesty causing loss or risk of loss, and criminal conspiracy to defraud dishonesty causing loss. The maximum penalty for these offences ranges, I understand, from 2 to 10 years. These are clearly serious crimes. Generally speaking, how many prosecutions has the AFP launched for white-collar crime?
Oh, I don't have that information, Senator.
Can you recollect any, or can anyone at the table recollect any in, say, the last 5 years?
I think we've had, Senator, a long history in terms of the work that we've done in this space, in terms of white-collar crime and fraud and anti-corruption. I think I know a couple, particularly the last couple of years, and I'm happy to provide more detail on notice, but Operation Bordelon, which was a very...
Sorry, I didn't catch the word.
Operation Bordelon, which was a complex tax investigation as part of the Serious Financial Crimes Task Force. Five offenders convicted of conspiracy to defraud the Commonwealth and dealing in proceeds of crime. In relation to a multi-million-dollar fraud against the ATO, Operation Albrus was also a very complex fraud investigation. In March 23, the core group for 5 of the 15 offenders were found guilty and convicted of participating in a $100 million fraud against the Commonwealth. And then there's a range of successful investigations involving the NDIS. I think if you step back and look at it, I think there's been 2 significant constructs in our work in this space. The original Project Wickenby, which was a joint task force with a range of agencies, including tax, focusing on high-end tax evasion, and with that concluded in 2015. It netted $2.29 billion in tax liabilities. And we successfully convicted 46 individuals as part of that task force. And I alluded to that the current task force that took over from Wickenby, the Serious Financial Crimes Task Force, which again is focused on white-collar crime, focused on high-end tax evasion. And as of the 31st of December 24, 67 individuals have been convicted and $2.8 billion in liabilities raised, and more than $1 billion in revenue collected. So, but again, Senator, I could speak for a very long time on this one. I'm happy to take on notice and provide more granular detail.
I think everyone would be relieved if you didn't, but would you mind taking on notice?
I'd be relieved if I didn't know this, Senator. Happy to take on notice.
I'm interested in both the prosecutions and the successful convictions, and exactly the material you provided on the outcomes in terms of income and revenue generated?
Yeah, we can provide a lot more granular detail on that, Senator.
Thank you. A quick last question. I wanted to refer to David Ross's article in The Australian dated the 11th of February this year. He stated that the AFP investigation into PwC has, to quote, assembled just 3 documents almost 2 years after the matter was first raised. Is that accurate?
No, sir.
Can you tell us how many documents you have raised? Ballpark?
Not off the top of my head, but you can appreciate that search warrants on PwC, there's the large number of documents that have been obtained, and not only physical but also electronic. That is not accurate.
So a large number of documents have now been obtained by the AFP. Do they include the Linklaters report?
I won't make a specific comment on that, Senator. We're still reviewing the evidence at this stage, so I couldn't be as definitive.
Can you give us any further information about the nature of the documents? You won't tell us how many.
All I can say, they fell within the conditions of the search warrant, Senator.
There have been many senators in our Senate who would like to know whether the Linklaters report has hit our shores and whether it is under examination by the proper authorities, as it should be. You're not willing to give any indication on that because it is a matter of significant public interest.
It's, again, that's evidence review is still underway, so I couldn't be definitive at this stage, Senator.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for your answers and for being here at this ungodly hour.
This is early for estimate, Senator Pocock. I just have a couple of questions about the Pacific, please. I'll keep them as brief as I can. Dimesh, Deputy Commissioner, thank you. While you're coming to the table, I have to say thank you to you because I met with the President of Palau recently, and of course I was very well briefed by officials, but I realised quite quickly into the conversation how big an issue policing was for him, and had all of these random facts in my brain because of all of our exchanges. So thank you very much. I noticed in your opening statement, Commissioner, you said that for the AFP, the footprint of the Pacific is non-negotiable. It's been a big part of your uplift over the last a couple of years. I was wondering what the next iteration is on the next event that you're preparing for, and what thinking are you doing, if any, about the preparation for the PIF in September in the Solomons?
Thank you, Senator.
I'm trying to condense as many questions as I could into one.
In fact, I'm not sure if the Commissioner wants to touch on in terms of the immediate future of significant events. In fact, the Commissioner will be attending a Pacific Island Chiefs of Police Executive Leadership Forum tomorrow, virtually, of course.
I was about to say, is that here?
But certainly I would start by saying the engagement across the Pacific is ongoing, and we work very closely through our wonderful people in Pacific, both located in the Pacific but also our members that are located here domestically with our Pacific partners to progress certainly the initiatives that come out of the Pacific Policing Initiative and also AP4 that I have spoken previously about at this particular forum. When you talk about what are we doing going forward under the auspices of certainly the Pacific, I call it PPI just to save time, we currently are participating in the design steering group. Commissioner Manning from Papua New Guinea is a co-chair with ourselves, and that particular strategic forum actually determines where the direction of the initiative is going and some of those key milestones. We very much take the view of it is by the Pacific for the Pacific, and so that involvement at the very strategic level by all of our Pacific partners occurs regularly. When you ask about where is it going, I can talk through some of the initiatives, but I can also talk on some of the things we have actually already delivered, because that is significant in itself. But as you know, certainly the PPI particularly is designed around 3 pillars. One of those is the Centres of Excellence, and we have 5 Centres of Excellence that we are working with our Pacific policing partners to implement in the Pacific. And they very much are selected from areas of expertise within some of our Pacific nations, such as PNG, Samoa, Fiji, and in fact the Commissioner is going to Fiji next week to meet with the new Fiji Commissioner and to talk through some of the investment that we will be taking forward with the Fiji Police Force. We actually are supporting a whole reset of the Fiji Police Force. I'm not sure, Commissioner, if you wanted to touch on that before I went into further detail about some of the others. You want me to keep going? Okay, very happy to keep going. We have, as you know, with the Solomon Islands, a significant investment in terms of recruitment and doing a significant uplift for the Solomon Islands in terms of their aspiration to almost double the numbers of police recruits that they would like to see in the Solomon Islands. So we are playing a really critical role in uplifting that particular capability through separate to the Centres of Excellence. We have, as I mentioned in Fiji, Centre of Excellence in relation to forensics. So that is particularly important, as you've heard some of the discussion here today relating to technology. We know that across the Pacific, as they get access to the internet, that brings with it a number of vulnerabilities across the spectrum of crime that we see here domestically. So we really, our intent is to invest heavily in terms of uplifting the capability of our law enforcement partners to combat all forms of transnational serious organised crime in that context. We have the PPSG, and when you refer to the PIF, whilst only we haven't made any formal recommendations, we did deploy that deployable pool of Pacific Police, but also our officers, which we deploy together to ensure the safe delivery of some of these key government forums. And certainly the intent would be to offer that particular group to deploy as part of the protection overlay for PIF going forward. And then, as you would be aware, we have the Pacific Coordination Hub located in Pinkenba in Queensland, and we continue to invest heavily in that particular hub, whereby we bring officers from across the Pacific, where we house them and deliver in partnership. So they are also part of the delivery team, training and capability uplift for Pacific countries for utilisation when they go back to their countries. So certainly at a strategic level, there are a number of those key priorities. I could probably talk for hours about some of the other things that we have delivered, particularly under the auspices of those things that will support more broadly some of the efforts across the Pacific, whether it's maritime, whether it's investigations, whether it is delivery of training in less than lethal use of force options and the like, and together with that capability equipment and the like.
Okay, thank you. I am conscious of time, so I'm going to have to leave it there.
I could keep talking.
I know, and so could I. Thank you. Well, just on Fiji then, what, Commissioner, what is the purpose of that visit in terms of the reset? What's the
so
aim?
part of that is the Fiji Police have installed a new commissioner, and part of that is looking at their entire structure. How do we help out with recruitment strategies, modernising the police force, also creating specialised units, specialised training, a whole range of things. So we'll be what we call customer focused in the sense that we'll be saying to the Fiji Police Force, look, how can we help you? And through Deputy Commissioner, the Deputy Commissioner's portfolio, deliver those services and those trainings in particular to the right areas to uplift their entire police force and also create a safer community in Fiji.
And Senator, I would say we know that Fiji government particularly are really concerned about community safety and ensuring that their police force are able to counter some of the serious crimes that they see occurring across their country, and part of that uplift for us is ensuring the community confidence piece is
so
returned
important for
to
their tourism industry as well, I guess. And there was those awful reports.
That's right. With
the Australians that were assaulted allegedly, but that's really good to hear.
Yes.
President Whipps speaks very highly of your initiatives, Commissioner, so thank you for all of your efforts. We only have a few minutes left, so we could probably go to the break now and come back just before 9:15. We're due to go.
Chair, I'm in your hands, but I could probably exhaust my questions.
Sure. Okay, go. Senator Patterson, you have the call.
Thank you, Chair. We might need Assistant Commissioner Nutt for this one. I suspect it falls into his area of responsibility. Assistant Commissioner, are you aware of a person flying the flag of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine at a rally in Melbourne on the weekend of 7-8 February?
I've seen the media, Senator, yes.
Yep. Is the AFP investigating this?
We are not investigating it, Senator.
What's the reason for that?
We obviously looked at it in terms of how that incidence may fit within the prohibited symbols framework, and on review we have not identified that an offence has been committed.
Why does it not fit in the threshold for the hate symbols legislation?
It's not a symbol of a prescribed terrorist organisation in Australia that is used to identify a prescribed terrorist organisation in Australia.
Is that because the PFLP is not listed as a terrorist organisation? Is that what you're saying?
Essentially, Senator, that's correct.
That's interesting, because you and I have had a discussion about this once in this forum before, where you said that it wasn't necessary for an organisation to be listed as a terrorist organisation in order for the prohibited hate symbols legislation to be brought into effect. Has your advice changed on that?
Not at all. It's just how a terrorist organisation, the law around terrorist organisation works in Australia under Australian law. And it can be done through prescription, as we've discussed, but it can also be done through conduct, and conduct in the course of an investigation, where it's established that individuals are acting as a terrorist organisation.
So is it your evidence that the PFLP is not acting as a terrorist organisation?
In the circumstances of the display that we're talking about, it is not for us to consider whether that our investigation would list that organisation as a terrorist organisation.
No, it's just a separate question to the listing, but as we've discussed and you've agreed, as long as that organisation is a terrorist organisation, regardless of whether it's prescribed in the criminal code or not, it's still an offence to display their symbols.
So when we look in the circumstances around that display, the individuals that were involved in that display were not acting as a terrorist organisation, and that symbol
well, of course not.
was not used to identify a terrorist organisation.
Well, one would hope that the people of that rally were not acting as a terrorist organisation. So is it your evidence that for a non-listed terrorist organisation, the only way for the prohibited hate symbols legislation to be given effect is if those individuals themselves are acting as a terrorist organisation?
And we had evidence on hand, and I'm saying evidence of conduct, that the individuals connected under investigation involved in displaying a symbol of a terrorist organisation.
So, had the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine been listed as a terrorist organisation, would you have come to a different conclusion?
Well, then the situation would have to be investigated, and the other limbs of the offence would have to be met.
Of course, but
progress.
Presuming that, all else being equal.
It would have been subject to investigation.
Yeah, so in this instance you decided not to investigate because the PFLP was not listed as a terrorist organisation and these individuals were not acting in the capacity of a terrorist organisation. But had they been listed as a terrorist organisation, you would have investigated them.
For the offences to apply,
yes,
that's where we would look at whether they're a terrorist organisation and or listed or prescribed as a terrorist organisation.
Right, well...
It's the requirements of the offences, Senator.
It's funny you should say that, because a couple of weeks ago I wrote to the Minister for Home Affairs and I copied in the Attorney-General, and I encouraged him to list the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine as a terrorist organisation, because I was concerned that a possible gap in the law might arise where these people would not be charged under the prohibited hate symbols legislation. And he replied to me, I think it was yesterday, quote, "It's not true that an organisation must be listed as a terrorist organisation under the Criminal Code in order for offence to publicly displaying a terrorist organisation symbol to be made out. An organisation does not need to be proscribed in order for the offence to apply," end quote. But you've just told me that had they been listed, it's more likely that you would have investigated them for this offence.
What I said equally applies, Senator, that an organisation can be proved by conduct, and that's subject to preferring terrorist organisation charges in Australia in a criminal investigation. And again, in that circumstance, it's open to someone who we're prosecuting as being a terrorist organisation to display a symbol that's used to identify that organisation, and that offence would potentially be available. Obviously, the more simplest route, of course, is looking at known symbols to identify prescribed terrorist organisations.
Indeed, I agree with you, and that's exactly why I wrote to the Minister, and I asked that he put it beyond doubt so that Australians are not under the misapprehension and that it's a good idea to turn up to a rally with a flag of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which is unquestionably a terrorist organisation. We've listed it under our financial sanctions framework for 20 years as a terrorist organisation, which criminalises fundraising for this organisation. And it is clear to me, based on your evidence, that if we want to make sure it doesn't turn up at rallies in the future, that listing it is the most efficient way of doing that.
Obviously, listing is a matter for government.
Indeed, I agree with you. It is a matter for government. Just quickly moving on, I suspect this will be straightforward.
We were due to go to a break at 9.
I apologise. This will be very quick.
9:15.
I'm anticipating the officer's response here, and I think it will be quick. New South Wales Police have said they're investigating the 2 nurses at the centre of the New South Wales hospital incident. Is the AFP also investigating this matter?
Senator, what I can say to that one is that we've provided support to New South Wales, so they have the lead on the investigation, but we have supported them, and that includes through our international network overseas.
Are there any Commonwealth offences that could be engaged here?
That is something that I think New South Wales would still be working through, but equally they have the ability to use Commonwealth legislation if they deem appropriate.
So we will know at the end of their investigation whether or not any further Commonwealth offences need to be investigated by the AFP, or they will satisfy themselves that no Commonwealth offences have been committed.
I think that would be an accurate description.
Oh, sorry, that was 2 different provisions.
Oh, sorry.
Which one?
Well, I think they need to continue their investigation to get to a point where they know what evidence they've got in front of them in terms of what appropriate offences might be.
Sure,
used.
but if they don't think a Commonwealth offence has been committed, does that mean the AFP would then not investigate a Commonwealth offence?
We would have to have that engagement with them in terms of where they've landed and why, and then in turn whether that would be something that we would then investigate separately.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Senator Patterson. We're due to go to a break. We will have to return to the